Autism, anxiety, and stress. Experiencing high levels of stress and anxiety is a common experience for lots of us in the autistic community. So in today's video, we'll look at some of the causes, what you can do about it, and I'll also share some of my own personal experience of what I am slowly understanding is a type of chronic illness. Hi everyone, Paul Micallef here from Autism from the Inside. I make weekly videos sharing the human side of autism, so make sure you hit subscribe to get the latest content. So there are any number of potential causes of stress and anxiety in life. Everything from an overloading sensory environment to threats to our physical or emotional safety. Maybe there are legitimate concerns and serious dangers that our brain is trying to prepare us for in the future. Some natural level of anxiety can be a good thing. When I care about an outcome, my body is naturally going to have some level of stress preparing me to give it an adequate amount of time and energy and attention. Often, it's a good idea to plan things in advance. For very important things, maybe I'll run it through in my mind hundreds of times before I actually get to the event itself. But there's also a level of background stress and anxiety that does no one any good. This is things like ruminating over things I have no control over, or planning for 101 possible failure scenarios when in reality I know that there's a very high chance that everything's going to be okay. The challenge that I find personally though is that middle ground where there is a legitimate concern, and so some degree of stress and anxiety is kind of warranted in the situation, but at the same time I know that my current level of anxiety is way too high to be productive in the situation. So I can't just tell my body to relax because it will say, no, this is important, you can't relax, you have to stay focused. But at the same time, being too anxious, too stressed, too preoccupied with future stuff impedes my ability to actually plan successfully. And more than that, probably the most important thing is it means that I have a terrible experience right now with all of these negative emotions that aren't doing me any good. So from an emotional intelligence perspective, the trick in this situation is to acknowledge what the anxiety is doing for me in a positive sense and really honor that and value that. And at the same time, let go of this need to try and make sure that everything is predictable and that I've thought of absolutely everything in advance. So for me, something I'm slowly coming to terms with is the pressure to function that I often put on myself. Now, in a sense, there's a certain level of this that might be healthy. Sometimes I don't want to get out of bed and it's still a good idea to get out of bed. But at the same time, if I'm not listening to my body and I'm putting expectations on myself that are a little bit unrealistic, then I'm stressing myself out trying to achieve something that was never really possible in the first place. I've always identified with fatigue and dealing with different issues like that, but I've never really identified with the concept of having a chronic illness until kind of recently. Now I'm starting to think, wait a minute, I have so many headaches and so many down days where I can't really get much done that day, whether that's because of a migraine or a low mood or just a completely unexplainable lack of energy. In a sense, it doesn't really matter what the reason is. The effect is that it makes it really difficult to commit to anything in the future. Because as soon as I commit to doing something, hey, would you like to go to this event on the weekend? Suddenly, I am committing myself to perform, for lack of a better word, to be functional and leave the house and talk to people and do whatever I've committed myself to doing at some future time, even though I don't actually know how I'll feel at that future time. And this is maybe just a personal thing for me, but I really don't like telling people I'll do something and then not being able to do it. I'd personally much rather say maybe I'll see how I feel compared to saying yes, I'll definitely be there and then pulling out later. So this huge degree of unpredictability, how am I going to feel when I wake up in the morning? Am I going to feel like I'm okay to leave the house? Am I going to feel like I basically have to stay in bed all day? Like that's a huge variation there that cannot really be easily predicted in advance. So do I want to go to that party on the weekend? Do I want to speak at this event that you've invited me to? Do I want to buy that concert ticket to that band that I really want to see? If I base my decision on my current mood, maybe, yeah, right now I'm really excited to go see that band, but when it gets to 9 p.m. on a Friday and I have to go into the city and go to a noisy venue and spend the whole time, that is a significant amount of time and energy, and I have to have the resources to be able to do that so that it's actually fun. So if I have so many headaches and so many down days and so many unpredictably low moods that there is a significant chance I won't be able to make it to a future event that I'm committing myself to, then even the process of deciding and saying yes to something carries a huge amount of anxiety. And then if the event is a week away, I've got 7 full days to worry if I'll be okay on the day and if I can do the thing or if I need to pull out or not. And this is the really seductive trap of anxiety. It's thinking about the future, especially in a negative way that kind of worries something's going to go wrong, but it's in a way that's a little bit helpless, a little bit powerless. I can worry if I'm going to have the energy on the day, but that doesn't actually help me have any energy on the day. And then the temptation is to overplan the whole situation. Let's think of 15 backup scenarios of everything I can possibly do if things go wrong. And now I'm using massive amounts of my mental energy planning for half a dozen different scenarios that cannot possibly all happen. In fact, maybe it will be fine and maybe I won't need any of my backup plans. Or maybe what actually happens is the 8th scenario on my list that I didn't adequately plan for. And this type of trying to predict the future, trying to plan for every conceivable scenario, is the trap that can lead to unhelpful amounts of anxiety. So something that I've found to be really helpful with that is to have maybe one backup plan. Not trying to predict everything that's going to happen in advance, but just having one exit strategy. And maybe that exit strategy is, I will see how I feel on the day, and if I need to, I can cancel. Or maybe my exit strategy is, let's just put on my shoes, go out the front door, get to the venue, and then if I feel like it, I can go home whenever I want. There's a weird paradox in that when I have more options and more flexibility, then it actually makes it safer and takes away a lot of that anxiety because I don't need to prepare for all of these potential situations. I've got this one backup strategy, which means I know I'll be okay one way or the other. And so spending less mental and emotional resources on stressing beforehand gives me more mental and emotional resources when I actually get there. And you'll notice that all of the solutions that I'm coming up with to handle the situation, they're all really simple. They're kind of generic, they're kind of universal, they're going to be applicable in lots of different situations, which means I don't have to go through the extensive executive function planning part of trying to predict in advance exactly what's going to happen. Maybe you're the type of person who really appreciates to know exactly what's going to happen, and having some idea of what to expect and how things are going to run is really helpful. It's all part of this drive to predict accurately in advance what's going to happen. But if I have a strategy that's relatively universal, that's going to work in a wide range of situations, then it also relaxes my need to know exactly what's going to happen. The fear, of course, is what if something happens that I'm not prepared for? What if something happens that I don't have the energy for? What if someone's making a demand on me and I don't have the resources to respond appropriately? And this could be a really little thing, like what if someone tries to shake my hand? What if someone tries to give me a hug? What if I don't want to do that? What if someone tries to engage in polite conversation and I just don't have the spoons to talk to them at this stage? Or maybe I need a break or something like that, and I am suddenly in the situation where there's this demand on me and I don't know what to do about it. And it's reasonably likely that something like that's going to happen. What are the chances that someone's going to try and talk to me? Like, reasonably high. So what do I do in that kind of situation? Well, it really depends on what's going to work for you. These days, I have a handful of social scripts, which I have practiced so often that I can just say straight away. If I don't want to talk to someone, or if I don't want to shake their hand, or if something like that, I can just say something like, sorry, I'm just not really feeling like a conversation right now, or just whatever my script is in the moment. And because I've prepared it so often in the past, it doesn't take any extra brain power to use. It's just my normal, natural emotional reaction in the situation. And this shift from planning and preparing to training my emotional reactions and my natural responses is a big part of the book that I'm currently writing, Unlocking Your Emotional Brain. It's all about trying to get those types of behaviors so practiced and so ingrained that I just don't need to think about them, because I have strategies that actually work in a situation. And weirdly, action and decision is the cure for anxiety. If I find myself stuck in my head, going round in circles, thinking about something too much, usually what helps a lot is to actually make one decision. Just pick one of the things and go with that. Or actually move my body, go for a walk, do some push-ups, or go to the gym or something like that. Sometimes music is really good to put my whole body into a different energy and mood. And when you think about it, it does kind of make sense, because the anxiety loop is trying to predict an infinite number of future possibilities. And so the cure to that is to focus on one reality, because I probably have the energy and the resources to deal with one reality, but probably don't have the energy and resources to deal with 100 potentially threatening realities. I'm actually not sure this is true, so I'll have to look it up and see if it's actually valid. But I once heard that the etymology of the word decision, like to decide, is like homicide, genocide. It's to kill something. You're actually taking away the opportunities. You're having 100 different possibilities in front of you, and you're executing 99 of them until you get to the one that you actually stick with. And maybe that's why it can be so difficult for some of us to actually make a decision. I know I feel a lot of grief for the options that are no more, because my brain has killed them off in deciding the one thing that I want to do. I've lost the 100 ideas that I could have done, but didn't have the time or resources to do 100 things at once. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated, because sometimes being forced to do one thing is actually the cure for anxiety. If I find it difficult to decide myself, someone else can decide for me and say, look, this is what you're doing right now. I'll give you an example from recently. I was invited to speak at an event and I had to prepare my presentation, and I just couldn't get in the mindset to it. It just wasn't really speaking to me. Preparing slides, it's not all that interesting. So I was putting it off and not really feeling like it. And in the back of my mind, I'd kind of told myself, look, I'll just do it tomorrow. And then I get an email from a last minute coaching client filling up my last spot for tomorrow. And suddenly my brain's like, oh, well, you've got no time tomorrow. You have to do it now. And that was the motivation I needed to just open up the document, sit down for half an hour and just get it done. And so weirdly, that impetus of you've got no time tomorrow cured my anxiety for today. And instead of thinking about it and worrying about it, I could just do it right now without thinking about the future. And that's essentially what I've had to do to manage my stress and anxiety around these chronic headaches. I just have to say yes to things and don't even entertain the thought of how am I going to feel on the day. I will deal with that when it comes. There is a reasonable chance that I'll feel okay and I'll be able to meet my commitment. And if I can't, then there was nothing I could do about it anyway. I even missed my own birthday party this year because I had a migraine that day. My friends literally went to this escape room that I organized because I was so excited about it without me, and I was at home in bed missing out on everything. And of course that sucks at the time, but at the end of the day, it's just one thing, and if I miss out on one thing, I'll have to do the next thing. So anyway, these are some of the strategies that I personally use to try and manage stress and anxiety. As you may know, emotional intelligence is my special interest, and I've actually written an online course, EQ 101, Mastering Emotional Intelligence. So if you'd like to learn more about emotional regulation and how you can manage not only stress and anxiety, but all types of energy and emotions, you can find all those details and more on the Autism from the Inside website. So anyway, I'd better leave it there for today. As usual, I'd love to hear your thoughts if you're able to leave a comment. Thanks again for watching. I hope you found this video valuable, and I will see you again next week. Bye.